Jack Bender, Mr. Mercedes season 3. There have been like a ton of twists and turns with the series and its history. It's pretty amazing that it found a home on Peacock. How has that fit been so far?
The fit is great. I mean, because they love the show and we love them. And I'll say one thing because I was always we all were. Steven thinks it's one of his best adaptation. And I got the actors we needed to hit it out of the park from the beginning. And Kate Mulgrew joining us this season kills the part. She's brilliant as Alma Lane. Um, but the frustration was the first two seasons was that on the one hand, the great news was DirecTV were great people who let me make the show I wanted to make. And on the bad news was not enough people saw DirecTV. I would talk to people in Europe or everywhere, Jordan for God's sake, and they were watching the show, and I couldn't get people in Santa Monica to watch it because nobody knew how to find it. So the fact that it is now on Peacock is a home run for us because I think it's getting the audience it deserves. And now with season 3, which drops today, I'm hoping it just continues to grow.
Yeah, I do have to tell you, I have to review a lot, um,
Yeah, I
and
bet.
and I really liked it. It
You know
was
what? I'm glad.
yeah, it's solid. I was looking at your resume, and you've done everything, but you've seemed to like find your place in long form storytelling on TV. What is it that draws you to that type of storytelling?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know as people, as artists, if we draw things to us or things are come to us.
Hmm.
Because sometimes, as the great Leonard Cohen once said, it was half my fault and half the atmosphere. You know what I mean? So it's like I think there's a combo there. And I would say that as a director, even though um, I did a couple of movies, and what happened was eventually the medium of television, as you well know, changed.
Yeah.
And in that, because I did a ton of TV movies, I've been very fortunate to be doing, way back when I met JJ on Felicity and then Alias and all these great shows. And then, there was The Sopranos and whatever, but storytelling really changed. And given cable and then streamers, which everybody talks about. So it's not news coming from me. The point is that long form television, and I recently had a conversation with my dear friend Damon Lindelof, who's pretty damn brilliant himself. And Damon really, who has written some terrific movies, talks about the long form medium in terms of, like, for instance, when I first got the galleys to Mr. Mercedes, Stephen and I talked about whether I should do it as a movie or as a series.
Mm.
And it was approximately 650 pages, chock full of these brilliant characters,
Mm.
surrounded by this obstacle course of a plot and this murder and finding the Brady. And Stephen does that. So to vitiate that and squeeze that down into a movie, a 110-page screenplay, which actually right now we're dealing with the Institute, Stephen's other book, which, we're grappling with movie versus TV.
Mm.
The point is, it's a very different medium. And I think that having the time, like what I wanted to do with Mr. Mercedes was I wanted to have the time to explore these characters that Stephen had created. And then David Kelley helped bring to life with me.
Mm.
And I think that that's what's so great about the medium. You don't have to rush the story, and you're allowed to if you get lucky with the cast I got, you need the time to let them breathe and act and do everything they do, so that someone like you who watches a lot of stuff can say, that's a good show, that's solid, I'm with that, I'm not feeling like I'm being plotted to death, you know. So I think that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I think.
Well, I mean, that's great. And King actually called season 3 the best of the series. What's your take on that?
I'd say that's probably true. You know, it's like, which of your kids do you love best? Uh, and It's hard to say, because the experience of making season 1 and 2 and the discovery with the actors of what we were able to make and the pride we all felt in it, I think season 2 was the trickiest. It's that old, when you're doing a series, sophomore slump. We fell into that with Lost.
Mhm.
In fact, at one point, Damon and Carlton called me and said, listen, you know, we're spinning our wheels here in the sand, so we're going to put our main characters in a cage, you know, and figure out what the hell to do
Right.
for a few episodes. And even though that seemed to work, you know, it's hard to continue weekly, especially Lost. Those days, we were doing 22 to 26 episodes a season. And thank the
Wow.
good Lord, unless you're doing network television, which has its pluses, you know, most streamers, you're doing 8 to 10 episodes, which allows you to have a life and, I believe, tell better stories, and that are more like movies, just with the time to take. And I think that I don't know what I was talking about or answering at that point.
We were talking about season 3 being the best one.
Oh yeah, and season 2 was the trickiest, because we went off the grid. Season 1, we had the architecture of the Mr. Mercedes book, number 1, and not knowing that Stephen, in his brilliance, was writing a second and then a third. But the second one, Finders Keepers, was very tricky, and David and I decided we would sort of postpone that and bring in End of Watch for season 2. And the tricky part, and we had Dennis Lehane, who was one of our head writers, and we had him season 1 also, with along with some other brilliant writers. But the writers, we had a challenge, which was not to go off the human sphere, which I always felt this show, as did Brendan, was about these people, whatever they were going through. And they had to be grounded. Hodges had to be real. The people around him had to be real. Therefore, no matter how crazy Brady Hartsfield was, therefore, in season 2, where Brady is brain dead, lying in a hospital, but still able to reach out of his evil web and kill people and do horrible things, how were we going to do that wasn't going to be purely sci-fi? And it was the writers and Dennis at the time who came up with the idea of having him in his lair, in his basement, where he would go down and do bad things when his mother was alive, season 1. And when I heard that, I said, that's brilliant, because it'll be the brilliant Harry Treadaway, who played Brady, his playpen to do all this outrageous stuff, which he and I came up with frequently. And I said, let's make it the Brady Hartsfield Museum, filled with his greatest hits. Let's bring in his crashed car. Let's bring in the grave where his dead brother is, who he pushed down the stairs. Let's bring in his mother's dress and his clown suit. Let's put all that around him, because it's really just his mind. And then, as I said, the genius Harry Treadaway and I just played and came up with some great stuff in there. But that came from the writers. Let's have that be his brain. And that was very challenging, to keep us within the realm of the human sphere, which we were able to get back to brilliantly in season 3.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that you were very careful not to touch into fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal.
Yeah.
And you kept it very psychological and grounded. I think that's really what makes it work.
Yes, and Brendan Gleeson was a big proponent of that, in defense of his character of Hodges. And at one point he said, you know, please don't make me talk to any more people who aren't there. And he was right. And David Kelley and we managed to walk that balance and keep it an ordinary man who was saying, this is impossible. He's in a hospital bed with a flatline brain. This is not possible, but guess what? It was. And in my neurotic, crazy brain, I kind of think, depending on your antenna, and how high it is, what radio frequency some people are tuned to that most ordinary people like me aren't.
Uh,
It's, there's a lot more possible in here than any of us know about, and I think out there. So we walked that tightrope with a lot of help, and the actors were great.
uh, okay, so are there any plans for season 4?
I don't know, I always wish, I mean, the actors would love it, I would love it, but as of now, we're just thrilled that season 3 has dropped on Peacock, and it's going to be, hopefully, continue to be loved.
Well, and they can see all of the seasons. I mean, it's the entire series.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of every one, as is Stephen.
Yeah.
Stephen will email me sometimes and say, Jesus, the stuff you guys are coming up with, I wish I had in the book. So, he was thrilled with season 1 and 2, as we all were. But season 3, is I think our best season.
Well, I guess my final question, and this is for all the fans, who's easier to work with, Stephen King or George R.R. Martin?
Well, it's interesting. I had the good fortune to be asked to do Game of Thrones originally and couldn't for a million reasons. And then the extra good fortune to be asked again, I guess it was season 5, by the guys, David and Dan, because they were doing an episode. They wanted to work with me, and I wanted to do the show. And they had that episode, The Door, which they felt sort of was a little bit like The Constant on Lost. It sort of dealt with multiple times. And so I was very lucky to be asked to do those episodes. George R. Martin, I only saw at the Emmys. And I went up and introduced myself, and I don't even know if he knew who the heck I was.
Yeah.
But working with David and Dan, and part of me felt, I will say one thing, as a director going on to, even though I did Lost and got a lot of recognition and some other terrific shows like The Sopranos, when you go on to a 5th season of a show that's the biggest show in the world with brilliant actors that some of my friends had directed brilliantly, you kind of feel like, what am I going to bring to the party? And that's not so much ego, is how can I tell any of these people anything they don't know about this show? And I had to do a lot of homework because I had seen every episode, but I still would get confused what land we were in, and I had to be corrected at times. But I found that everybody, and this is always true of the best possible artists, everybody who worked on that show were wide open if I had anything smart to say, and very, very willing to work with me. And it was a joy to do. So.
Well, that's awesome. And
yeah.
I am, I'm very eager to finish watching the rest of season 3 because I just started and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with Mr. Mercedes on Peacock. And here's to hoping that we will see more in the future.
All good things. I'll second that, and stay well, and thank you.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to talk to you.
You too.
Bye.